He had a narrow face with a big pointed jaw and had a sly, crooked smile. Welcome, listeners. I'm the one known as Cool Josh. But do you know what's not so cool? Being a weird, demonic, smiling creature who haunts millions of people around the world. Today, we will hear the personal story about a freaky hitchhiker Kristen and Josh came across, and how it may be related to the smiling man Josh's dad came face to face with when he was just a young man. We will also hear multiple stories from Reddit about similar beings being seen. And Josh and Kristen will, perhaps without even knowing it, come across something supernatural while speaking about it in this very episode. So when your kids ask you, Mom, Dad, can we stop for scary stories? You can tell them we have scary stories at home. Welcome to Off-Brand Horror. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. You're listening to Off-Brand Horror. I'm Josh.
I'm Kristen.
And today's episode is Creatures in Black, which is very vague.
Yeah.
But it's because I've got an explanation. Okay.
You know, when people say creatures, I think of like beasts, I guess, like werewolves or something, but I know everything scary is
maybe we should retitle it right now. This hasn't been posted yet. Cryptids in Black.
That might work, maybe. I guess cryptids could be humanoids, huh?
We don't know what we ended up calling this, but it's something in black. Maybe we'll call it something in black. Humanoids in black. Okay, but this is basically, I didn't know what to call this, like, specifically, because this all started with a story of something that actually happened to you and me, and it is the story of the hitchhiker.
I always, like, have no idea what you're talking about until you actually, like, gets... So, if you listen to Terraform back in the day, you may have heard this from our very first episode, I believe. Dang, was it?
I believe so. I believe it was the very first episode.
My timeline of the way we talked about things is so all over the place.
So I'm going to retell that story right now. And basically, I wanted to see if anyone else has seen anything like this. And I researched it and found some other stories that I will also tell. But let's start with the story of the hitchhiker. For those of you who have never heard this or would like your memory refreshed. So, Kristen and I dropped our dog off with Kristen's brother, who was living with his uncle at the time, y'all's uncle. Mm-hmm. And we'll leave out the location, but we dropped her off while we went on vacation, and we got back from vacation, and we went to pick her up, and this was on the way home from their house. We were driving down a 4-lane highway, plus there was a middle lane, too. There was a turn lane, so there was 2 lanes, middle lane, 2 lanes. And we're driving, and in the middle, in the turn lane, from a distance, we can see, or I guess I'll tell from my perspective, because at first I didn't know if you could see this too, but I see what looks like a man wearing all black, sitting on a bucket in the middle of the street, in the middle of the highway, in the turn lane, sitting on a bucket. Okay? As we're getting closer,
the man begins to stand up off the bucket, right? And as he's standing, I realize it looks like he's never going to stop standing because of how absolutely tall he was. And as he's standing, he has his thumb like this, and he's going, sorry to the audio listeners, but for the visual watchers, he's going
like he's standing up and then leaning over, like arched sideways though.
So he's standing up very slowly, arching himself to the side with his thumb in the air, and it's just a very unnatural movement.
Yeah, it's like a very smooth and never-ending movement, it seems.
Yes. And so abnormally tall, very strange that he's sitting on a bucket in the middle of the highway, all black, couldn't make out his facial features. And I was like kind of speechless as we're driving up, and I'm seeing this. And then finally I turned to you and I'm like, as we like passed him, I was like, did you see that? And you were like, yeah, what was he doing in the middle, and why was he so tall? And like we were like, and we even discussed like, should we turn around? And like,
I wish we would have.
I wanted to like record it, like, you know, you hold your phone up and record how freaking weird this looked. But I think at the time you're like, no.
I was a little spooked, and I was completely prepared to not even mention anything, because like, oh, you're just overreacting, that wasn't as weird as you think it was. And then you said something, I was like, okay, it was weird.
Yeah, like the way that he looked, it was very, very strange the way that he looked, and it brought about an eerie feeling.
Yeah, because I remember having an eerie feeling too.
Yes.
And I was like, this is a sign of something.
Yes, and we
silently not saying anything, and was prepared to never say anything.
And we discussed on Terraform, you were like, maybe he was a harbinger of like the pandemic, because this was 2019.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was right before COVID ended up hitting, and it was just super creepy. It felt super weird, and I remember going to work and telling all the guys about it, and it was just a super creepy story, and this was before we knew we were going to do a podcast. And so we told that story during the Smiling Man episode of Terraform. And I was trying to think of what to do for this episode. And I was like, I really want to know if anyone else has seen this, because surely we're driving down a busy highway. Someone else saw this. So like, I'm looking specific to our area, and I'm also just looking for anyone who can describe the same thing that I saw. So I looked up so many different things: creepy hitchhiker, freaking Man in Black, and all these different things. And I think Man in Black is what I ended up. No. Tall Man. I looked up Tall Man was one of the things that ended up yielding a result. And
plus, that was like the most standout feature about
how abnormally tall he was. And so that's what I ended up finding, was something titled Tall Man on the paranormal subreddit on Reddit. So that's what I'm going to read now. And Kristen, you tell me if this, after I'm done, if it sounds anything like what we saw. Regardlessly, this is a very creepy story. So this was posted by user Trill Unicorn. Shout out Trill Unicorn, 9 years ago.
Gotta love them Reddit names.
Titled The Tall Man. I'm not sure if this goes directly within paranormal. It's mostly about a man that used to come to me in a dream state or from a distance, and I was just wondering if this man or someone similar has ever visited them. He visited me when I was a little girl. I had just gotten out of surgery to get my tonsils out. I was in a dream haze and saw him sitting in a chair in my hospital room. He was tall.
I don't like this setting.
He was tall.
If I'm ever in the hospital, never leave.
You just look in the corner and there's this tall freak sitting there. He was tall, 6 foot 5 inches at least, and very skinny. He had long legs in which he wore black pants to cover, and a long tuxedo-like jacket that was opened to reveal a white shirt. He had a narrow face with a big pointed jaw and had a sly, crooked smile. His eyes were sunken in. He smiled at me and told me it would be okay and he'll come back later. I told my mom about it again and she said I was probably just dreaming. About a year later, I was walking home from school, and as I approached my house, I could see in the big bay window the same man was sitting on my couch next to my mom. I ran inside, but when I got inside, no one was there. I asked my mom if anyone had visited her, and she said she'd been alone in the house all day. The third time I saw him, I went to my at the time boyfriend's house after an exam. I was really tired, so I just climbed into his bed and went to sleep. I felt a rush of cold air, and I woke up to get another blanket, and he was standing at the end of the bed, crouched over, same clothes, same sly, crooked grin. This time, he put his finger over his mouth and went, shh. I screamed, and my boyfriend came running, and he was gone again. Now, at age 26, I saw him again. He was in my spare bedroom. He never does anything, but I don't feel a calm energy when he's around. I feel very nervous, my heart beats fast, and I can't think straight. Has anyone else experienced this man or something like that and can help put this into perspective for me? So first of all, reactions to the story.
No, you have to edit this part out.
Edit it out, why?
Because my eyes are all watering. Just let me wipe my eyes real quick and then we can discuss.
It adds to it.
No, it doesn't. It's embarrassing.
It's not embarrassing. Shows how creeped you are.
Yeah, being alone with a creepy paranormal
Tall,
man in your room.
freaking man in black.
Stalking you?
Yeah, and what I can't remember, it's been so long since I listened to the first episode of Terraform, why we brought up the Hitchhiker. Was it because we were like, oh, is this the smiling man, or was it something else bring it up?
I think it's because when we were trying to find other stories about the smiling man, a lot of them were they saw him on the side of the road. So we're like, well, we saw a weird thing on the road.
See, and I didn't even think about that. That connects it again. Because for me, it was almost like an epiphany when I was reading this. I was like, oh, he's smiling. I was like, that's almost like the smiling man. And I was like, wow, we were doing the episode of the smiling man when I talked about this before. And did we see the smiling man in the middle of the road? And, oh, by the way, broad daylight, if we didn't mention it, in broad daylight, this man was standing in the middle of the road. This one's smiling. Like I said, couldn't see this guy's facial features. Was he smiling? Because, also, if you didn't listen to that episode, the smiling man has been a constant in my life because of a story that comes from my dad that he has told throughout his life, that he stands by to this very day, that happened to him, that he's had quite a few creepy things that have happened to him, but this one has really, really stuck with him.
I don't blame him.
Yeah. And before I tell that, though, your reaction to that, do you have anything you want to say to that story?
You have anything I want to say to it? That I just hope it never happens to me. Glad it's not happening to me. Thanks for putting that in my head.
Do you think it's the same creature that we saw?
I hope not. But the fact that he was really tall is...
Very tall in all black, besides she said a white shirt, which we could be misremembering.
Which I don't remember the specifics of his clothing that much. The biggest thing that I remember was just him standing, like continuing to stand for a really long time.
Yes.
And
never stopped standing.
I'm pretty sure he had long hair. But I mean, yeah, I guess that could be, thankfully he didn't decide to stalk us if it's the same entity.
Yeah. Yeah. So the story that I grew up with from my dad is that he was at a friend's house. His friend told him he could sleep on the couch and threw him a blanket. My dad laid down on the couch, and his friend, before he went to sleep, said, my brother is out drinking. He's probably going to be home late, so if he comes in drunk and sits on you or something, just push him off and be like, hey, I'm sleeping on the couch for the night, and he'll leave you alone and he'll go to his bedroom. And so my dad was like, okay. So he lays down, and he said it felt like just as soon as he closed his eyes, all of a sudden he felt a pressure on his chest. And he was like, dang, like, did I doze off? And like already I'm feeling his brother sitting on me. So he went to move his arm to push the guy out, be like, hey, I'm sleeping here. And he realized he couldn't move his arm. So he opens his eyes, and what he sees when he opens his eyes is someone sitting on his chest, staring him directly in the eyes with a smile that went ear to ear. And he just smiles, keeps eye contact. And my dad said he realized that the guy felt like he was light as a feather sitting on him, and yet he couldn't move his body at all. And so he's trying. All he can move is his eyes. He can't speak. The creature stands up, still keeping eye contact, and begins floating, gliding in a way. He didn't like levitate way up, but he said it looked like he was gliding toward the front door. My dad still couldn't move. And then he got to the front door, opens it, keeping eye contact, keeping that smile, leaves the house. The door closes. As soon as the door closes, my dad can move again. He jumps up, starts pacing around, scared to death, doesn't know what to do, doesn't know what to think. And he decides he wants to leave this house because he's never experienced anything like this. So he feels like, okay, it's got to be tied to the house, right? So he jets out the house and runs to his uncle's house, who lived right down the road. And that was my dad's smiling man story. And this was something that he told me, and I grew up, always like going back. I told my friends about this story. It was always like super creepy every time, but fun to talk about. And never knowing that there was a whole freaking thing out there about the smiling man, like a whole creepypasta, and like multiple stories about people seeing him on the side of the road, and people seeing a smiling man when they're experiencing sleep paralysis, which is what, later on people would tell my dad, oh, you just experienced sleep paralysis. And I have my thoughts about sleep paralysis. Why do we all see the same thing? I've said that before. So yeah, that was his story of the smiling man. And it's weird. It feels like it's all connecting. I feel like we saw the smiling man in the middle of the road.
Maybe. I can't say for sure.
I do have another story that I want to get into that I found. But we are kind of far into this right now, so I think that it is time right now for a commercial break. So I will tell my story. I know that you also have a story that you would like to tell, and we will tell both of those stories when we get back from these messages. A video game unlike anything you've played before. Walk your character to the bedroom, turn off the lights, go to sleep, and prepare to fight for your life. Each sleep paralysis demon you defeat will unlock a stronger demon to fight the next night. With characters such as the Chest Sitter, the Smiling Man, the Hat Man, the Woman in White, and much more. Or play as the demon and stalk your prey throughout the day, remembering to pounce as soon as they're about to enter their REM sleep cycle. Now introducing Create a Demon. Create your very own sleep paralysis demon with a multitude of options, and make sure that your human is so terrified that they never wake up again. Sleep Paralysis the video game, rated M for mature.
Hello and welcome back to the show. We hope that you're enjoying. Before the break, we were talking about... What were we talking about? Before the break, we were talking about this creature in black that Josh and Kristen saw hitchhiking in the middle of the road. Is that creature connected to these other creatures known as the Smiling Man, or perhaps even the Hat Man? Let's go back to the episode and see what else Josh and Kristen could dig up.
All right, welcome back to Off-Brand Horror. I'm going to get into this. There was a comment left on this Tall Man post that I read off of Reddit before the break. And someone says, "Wow, your story was referred to me by another user. While I have no answers, I believe we may have seen the same thing, or at least something similar." And then they link their post, which they called the Victorian Man. So, the story goes. Oh, by the way, the user, he's deleted, so I can't tell you the username, or I would. He says, this story takes place around 1987 in the capital city of Mexico, where I spent the majority of my childhood. I was around 6 at the time, my older brother around 8. The geography of my home then can be best described as consisting of mixed-use development buildings, storefronts on the lower floors and housing on the upper floors. Our housing development was the last on our block, meaning that to our immediate left were adjacent buildings and storefronts with no discernible partition. To our immediate right was the corner facade of the building. Did I say it wrong?
I don't know. I always pronounce it facade, but I don't know if
Facade.
that might be a figurative kind of
language.
Go on.
The exact time of day in which this occurred escapes me, although I would like to say it was somewhere around 1 in the afternoon on a weekday. So this is also midday, like when we saw him. The streets were highly populated at what seemed to be all times of the day, with no exception made on this day. There was nothing extraordinary about this particular day. My brother had developed an affinity early on for racing cars, and as such, he would often look out the windows of our tiny apartment and observe the cars passing by on the street below us, leaning on the windowsill. My brother was to my left, and we were playing with our Hot Wheel cars on the windowsill when something to my right, outside of view from the window, immediately caught my attention. Having been leaning somewhat alongside the wall to my right, visibility was difficult. I removed myself from the wall entirely and leaned with some effort forward against the window. I could not make out the object at first, but thought at the time that it resembled a sombrero, but not like that of a mariachi or a cowboy. But once the object came fully into view, I noticed it was black, full of thick dust and ashes, and unusually long like a tall top hat. My only reference for ash at the time was seeing my grandmother cleaning the interior of her gas stove. The object moved upward from the ground as if it were floating in mid-air. What it was attached to, I could not see yet, so he's looking out the window and he sees this hat coming up. Because keep in mind, they're up like on the side of the building, so it looks like a levitating hat covered with ash, and he's like, what the heck is this? And then here in a second he sees what the hat is actually attached to.
Don't like where this is going.
I waited there confused and perplexed. My heart is beating wild even as I type this, recalling, as I did then, the terror of what we saw. I remained glued to the window for a few seconds.
Why is he so close?
More, until the hat was at full eye level outside the window. I will never forget what was attached to the top hat, and I will do my best to describe it. A man on the latter side of middle age, of pale white skin, with a long and elongated disposition and pointed jawline with a wide smile, fixed to the corners of his profile. This is as close as what I...
Interesting way of describing something.
This is as close of what I have been able to find for reference.
Ooh, could you imagine coming face to face with that in the window?
I know. Furthermore, he was dressed from head to toe in all black with a long coat, like those worn by the men of Victorian era, a black vest, and appeared to be covered in ash and dust. He appeared to be smiling intensely, looking forward at the facade. Facade. I've heard it 3 ways.
You've heard it 3 ways?
Of the building, either ignoring us or having not seen us. So he doesn't see them. His teeth were not white, but distinctly yellow, and his cheekbones were visible, but not from what would be undernourishment. The pale coloration of his skin was stained gray and black due to the ash-like material that was covering his hat. I stood there, transfixed, trying to find an explanation for what I was seeing. What comes next defies reason and toys with my sanity still to this day. I had briefly mentioned that it appeared as if the hat was floating in midair, and seeing, as incredulous as this is/was, that a man was right outside our window. My 6-year-old mind began to connect the dots, which led me to see that he was climbing the side of the building. His movements appeared a mix between rhythmic and unnatural at the same time. His hands were thick and veiny. His nails were long, pointed, and yellow. He dug into the building. How he did this, I have no idea. He moved himself upward with relative ease. I nudged my brother with my elbow at this time, who then stops playing, because he's playing with his Hot Wheels, and looks up and is now also staring at this man, climbing the side of the building. As if by sheer providence, at this moment, the man stops. He turns his head in our direction, the smile never leaving his face, staring at the sky. His eyeballs find us, and he stares, removes one hand from the brick of the building, and with his index finger places it in front of his teeth and goes, just like the guy in the last story in the hospital room. And then he continues to climb. We open the window, sticking our heads out.
What is wrong with these kids?
We open the window, sticking our heads out, and see him going around the corner of the building, still upward, and then out of sight. As I type this, I cannot know how most of you will react, and if it wasn't for my brother, who has recounted this story many times throughout our lives, I would not have the courage to sit here with humility and certainty. I know what we saw that day defies reason, logic, and even reality itself. But given the other strange occurrences in our lives since then, I cannot disengage from the feeling that there are things in this world that do not conform to the boundaries set forward by our senses. And then, of course, Trill Unicorn commented after he commented on his page and says, "Wow, I read this post as soon as I read your comment on mine. My eyes are watering. This is the first time I have not felt alone with this man lurking throughout my life. I only wish I knew the reason for his appearances."
I don't think it would bring me comfort to know someone else saw it. You know?
You want to believe you're crazy.
Yes.
Oh, I'm just insane. So if that's the thing that we saw, then holy crap. I'm glad we didn't see a smile and we didn't see him go, shh.
Yeah.
I thought about calling this episode like the shushing man, but I didn't want to give anything away. I didn't want to give away the shushes because I feel like that's the part that creeped me out like a lot. That was not only was that the connection like with the black clothes and the description for them, but like also the shushing for the two Redditors.
Yeah, the part that gets me the most is he's in places he doesn't belong.
Yeah. Climbing up a building, sitting in the corner of a hospital room, slowly standing. Like I said, it was like unnatural the way he was doing it. Like putting that thumb out. And this guy was like, it was like rhythmic but unnatural at the same time, the way he was crawling. So he's crawling at like an angle upward and then he crawls around the building like he's freaking Spider-Man.
Maybe it was Spider-Man playing a prank.
Hey, Kristen, Spider-Man doesn't exist.
Oh, boy.
Well, I'm being told that we need to go to our weather update. We were going to have you tell your story first, but we're going to go ahead and go to the weather update, and then we'll come back and you can tell your story. So, Krystal Weathers, take it away.
Thank you, Josh. Sunday will be cloudy with low rumbles of thunder. Monday and Tuesday will have scattered storms. Wednesday and Thursday will be unseasonably cold. Watch out for ice. You wouldn't want to slip and hit your head, resulting in a coma, spending your days trapped in your unstimulated mind, not dead but not quite alive either, wondering if it will ever end. Friday will be sunny and full of nervous energy. Saturday will also be sunny. That is all. Back to you.
All right, Krystal, thanks. We will be right back after this commercial break. Imagine you walk outside, you look up in the sky, and see a UFO. If you tell anyone what you saw, they will call you crazy. They will call you a conspiracy theorist. Now imagine you're abducted. These creatures paralyze you, tell you not to panic, and probe you. If you're lucky enough to be released, you will not be believed. This is because there is a conspiracy within the government to keep these aliens a secret. Perhaps they're even living amongst us already. Maybe they're the ones in charge. Beloved, I have news for you. We believe you.
Aliens are real and they're coming for you. Call us at 858-215-4455 and leave us a voicemail of your experience with UFOs or aliens. We will listen to it, research it, and reveal what we find on Off-Brand Horror. That's 858-215-4455. 858-215-4455. Call now.
All right, welcome back to Off-Brand Horror. Kristen, I believe you had a story to tell us?
Yes, I have a short one. I don't know what color he was wearing, so I don't know if it falls under the in black, but there was definitely smiling involved, and it's actually somewhat similar to the alien story I told. Mm-hmm. So, do you remember what year that was?
I know they were like a interracial couple and it wasn't cool.
Yeah, it was like the 60s or 70s.
So about the 90s?
What's wrong with you? Anyways.
Or 2000s in certain places.
Wow. In November of 1966, Woodrow Durenberger, a sewing machine salesman, was driving home one evening after, a long day of selling sewing machines. He saw flashing lights down the road and, thinking it was a police car, pulled over. But as it got close to him, he realized it was an aircraft shaped like a kerosene lamp. You know what I'm talking about? Like those old, like oil lamps?
Okay.
Yeah, just like the glass part.
Yeah.
It stopped in the road, and a man with a large grin on his face and arms folded with his hands under his armpits, he said during the whole time that this person interacted with him, he had his hands folded and he was smiling the whole time.
Hey there.
Oh God.
Either partner.
So this guy stepped out of the aircraft and walked to his vehicle. The man began to communicate with him, but his mouth didn't move. So he's standing there, arms folded, big smile on his face.
Was he giving a weather update?
I also thought about that too when reading this. Like, oh, that's kind of like the weather girl.
It's kind of like, no offense, Krystal, but I mean, we have noticed that. That's a little weird.
Maybe they're from the same place.
Maybe so. Are you an alien? She won't tell us anything. She only gives the weather. That's it.
Well, Durenberg stated during an interview, he asked me to roll down the window on my right-hand side of my truck, and I done what he asked. He's from West Virginia. And this man stood there, and he first asked me what I was called, and I know he meant my name. And I told him my name, and he asked me, he said, "Why are you frightened?" He said, "Don't be frightened. We wish you no harm." He said, "We mean you no harm. We wish you only happiness." And I told him my name, and when I told him my name, he said he was called Indrid Cold.
Injured Cold?
Indrid.
Oh, Injured Cold. My name's Injured Cold. Indrid Cold.
Indrid Cold. So after this, he went to the police, he reported it, and because it was weird, it was strange, and it creeped him out. And a few other people reported similar sightings in the days to follow. Ugh. Yeah. And so Durenberg claimed that this Indrid Cold visited him a few more times after that, and they kept in touch for a while. And he said that he was from some place called Ganymede or something. I don't know how it's pronounced, but like the, I guess, planet he's from or wherever his home.
What the heck?
Yeah, that's what it's called. So the thing that sticks out to me is he's smiling, but it's very off-putting. It's unnatural, but he's saying we don't mean you any harm. We mean you happiness. So it's like they're imitating humans.
Uncanny Valley type crap.
So when we're comfortable with each other, we smile, Yeah. So it's like they take that to too far of a level,
Yeah, I don't like that.
And it's not like they don't earn it.
Yeah.
And that makes it even creepier. But yeah, so that is the story I found. That kind of reminded me of the stuff you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you have a Smiling Man story? If so, you could call our number, 858
414.
You could call our number that you probably heard earlier on the commercial, and will be linked below. Or send us an email to offbrandhorror@gmail.com and let us know, have you seen a smiling man? Have you seen a creepy hitchhiker? Have you seen a man in black? Any of those things. Any scary story you got, let us know. We want to hear it. If we have anything happen, we will let you know on the next episode of Off-Brand Horror. And then, boy, the episode after next is the beginning. Can you believe it's October already? We will be beginning the Halloween special episodes right after this next episode. Next week, the week after, we will be doing 4 Halloween-based episodes. So, time to get
in the spooky spirit.
Spookier than ever. This is what we live for, people. This is what we've been waiting on all year. It's Halloween, baby. We will see you next week right here on Off-Brand Horror. Bye.
I think Josh and Kristen may have been onto something with the smiling man. Personally, didn't sit right with me the way Kristen's camera blinked black and then flashed off. I think I'll go take a shot of NyQuil and pray to our alien overlords that I'm not the next victim. We'll see you next week, right here on Off-Brand Horror.